Stephan Vince is in our virtual green room. His book is so intriguing and I would say inspiring, and that's in the title, Inspiring Integrity: How to Win with Compliance and Propel Performance. And he joins us in Arthur's Corner here on America Tonight with me, Kate Delaney. So this book, I was even just telling my neighbor who is in compliance in that field, you have to have this book and you have to spread it around. And you're going to find out why in just a second. So Stephan, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Kate. It's a real honor and a privilege to be here with you and your listeners today.
What was it that propelled you to tackling this and putting it out there in the world?
Well, I wanted to leave a legacy, first for my family and specifically my little girl who's 13 now, but then also for fellow professionals and leaders. I'm a big believer is that you pass it forward. And I was very fortunate to have some incredible teachers, instructors, coaches, and mentors. And so I wanted to do my part at this stage in my career to pass it forward because I think it's a very positive message. And I think we need as much positive messages today that we can get.
Yeah, and you talk about, and that's the other part, the through line, how to win with compliance and propel performance. So how do we do that? Give us a couple of examples of that.
Well, in reflecting on my life, and we'll get into as to how I had the opportunity to do that rather involuntarily, I really realized some very common threads between all my different experiences, between as a student, as an athlete, as a military officer, as a lawyer, as a Washington insider on Capitol Hill, as a corporate exec, and now as an entrepreneur and business owner. And I think at the end of the book, General Powell, Colin Powell, says it best. It's about people. And in terms of propelling performance, I don't know about you, but whenever I hear a particular rock and roll song, whenever I really get energized about something meaningful, I can feel the tingling of adrenaline running up and down my spine. And whether it's a bench press or whether it's a speech or whether it's anything that's super meaningful, you get that physical connection to the purpose that you're trying to achieve. And so what I've tried to communicate is that there's a rational, technical, legal side of compliance, and then there's the human side, and that you need to connect with both to propel performance. What it does, it creates an inner confidence within people. But let's be specific, within the sales force, because that's the main focus that I've been parachuted into these hot zones of investigations where salespeople in the pharma industry have crossed the line allegedly. And so everyone's afraid. Everyone's afraid of going to jail. It's a very real fear because that's exactly what can happen. So people are timid. They don't want to cross that line. And so that's exactly the opposite of what you want. It's like a football team. We've been reading about, at least here where I live, about the Patriots being, quote, soft. They're not aggressive. They're making mistakes left and right. What are they? They're out of compliance. They're out of compliance with the technique that you need to master, and so you can be aggressive when you have that down. And that's why on the cover I have a crew team, an 8-man shell. And I used to do that in college. I was recruited and I practiced at pretty high level. And you're in compliance with the stroke, with the rhythm. And in the movie Boys with the Boat, they talk about the swing. You can feel it. And you have to feel people's integrity. And as a leader, you have to convey that passion and connect with people's senses and get that adrenaline flowing. And guess what? It unleashes the confidence, the pride of being with a great organization that's trying to achieve great things, not to be compliant for compliance sake, but to provide a great therapy, a great medicine for sick people. That's something worth getting up for, getting excited about. And it's really integrating compliance and making it an outgrowth of this broader mission and knowing how to do that with precision. And that's what the book's about.
It's interesting you bring up the cover of the book is beautiful, and the fact that you were recruited to be as part of like one of the boys in the boat, to be on a crew. How did you get to that point in your life? Because it shows you that you have that discipline. Did you always have that athletic ability?
Well, that's funny that you asked that, Kate. Um, I decided to go out for rowing. I had done the traditional sports. I never was allowed as a young kid to play popcorn or football, but I always loved playing football in the snow and would pick up football and stuff like that. So I went out for it when I went to boarding school. I didn't tell my parents. So I'd come home limping and all this stuff, and I was just saying, it was a phys ed class, and then finally at the end of the trimester, in that case, they found out. Same thing. I was a swimmer and then baseball, but then I decided I was fairly small as a kid, dripping wet, about 130 pounds. But then I got into lifting weights, and I set some records. Just came naturally, and I went out for crew just to say, hey, let's try this. And that's another lesson that I share with my daughter and other people. Take risks, go try new things, and you'll never know what can happen. Well, that's what happened to me. They put me in the stroke seat, which is the seat that sets the tempo, the pace, and the technique. And everybody else behind the stroke follows the stroke. And in other words, is in compliance with the stroke. And they said, all right, Steve, we want to start it out at a 42 strokes per minute. We're going to do a little race here. You want to settle to a 36 and then bring it back up at the end to another 42 or even 44. And no matter what number they gave me, I could hit it exactly. And then my teammates said, how do you do that? And I said, I don't know. I just feel it. And
Wow.
that's just how it fell into that. And then they different coaches saw me rowing at the head of the Charles and got recruited at Columbia. They flew me down, and the rest is sort of history. So that's how I fell into that situation. But one thing about Columbia, now today they're the co-Ivy League champions of football, the first time since 1961. Heck of a
Yeah,
long.
incredible, right?
Yeah, and very excited as a lion, roar, lion, roar, as we say at Columbia. But Columbia was known as finishing, excuse, I won't say the words, but the acronym is DFL, dead last, in rowing when I got there. And there was a real sort of losing attitude in the locker room, an acceptance. And I heard about that here just today about the Patriots, where the players were sort of laughing and not really taking serious after getting blown out by Miami. And that's the kind of thing that is intolerable. And I didn't tolerate it. And so that's where, again, a leader, whether you're an athlete, a participant, or whether you're the coach or you're the CEO of a company, doesn't tolerate that kind of stuff. You set the direction, you set the tone, the excitement, the passion, or the disappointment if something happened. But again, the positive energy needs to flow, and people need to feel exactly what they need to do. And so that's just in the athletic side, then there's a whole military and corporate
Mm.
side.
Yeah,
But
on the military side, you say in your book for everybody listening, as an officer in the Marine Corps, I learned early on that no matter how high you rise up the ranks, the best leaders are those who lead by example. I love this. You said getting out from behind their desk and into the field, they endure the rain, the snow, hot desert sun, or whatever Mother Nature throws at them or their fellow Marines. Physically seeing, experiencing, and feeling what Marine encounters is worth its weight, which what each Marine encounters is worth its weight in gold. And here's the payoff. And you're talking about this with your book. As an executive or compliance professional, you or the right representative needs to get out into the field as well. Bingo, right?
bingo is right. Absolutely. Uh, the people you lead need to see that you're not above what
Yep.
you're asking them to do, that if anything, you're doing more. And as a Marine, you get up earlier, you do the push-ups and the sit-ups and the pull-ups and the 3 mile run, and then you go do something else and you work out again later in the afternoon, which is not required for others. Again, you lead by example, you lead with your passion, and that's inspiring to people. Who said, man, this guy really he does what he says, or she. Again, we want to include their amazing women out there in life. And so that's the beauty of today's world, where these opportunities have been made available
Mm.
to women and to diverse people, and not just limited to men. But that's been my experience. Again, it's about the passion and not making compliance a goal unto itself. You don't get up in the morning. Well, some people, I guess, do, because I've asked these questions, and invariably one person raises their hand. I ask, well, who gets up in the morning to say, oh, okay, I'm getting up to be compliant? And yeah, and most people say, no, I'm getting up to sell some amazing therapies, or I'm getting up to uh, create some incredible research to break the envelope when it comes to technology and cybersecurity, or whatever it is that you're doing, or to create a great talk show, and interview a great author, not necessarily me, but whatever it is that you do, that's the passion. That's what the excitement is. Not that I'm going to be compliant with all FCC rules, which you are, of course, but that's part of it. Again, it's the technique. It's the piece of the larger mosaic that creates meaning for compliance. Because flip it upside down. What if you're not compliant? Well, if you're not compliant with the technique in rowing, someone catches a crab and you lose the race by 3/10 of a second. That actually happened to me. Or, again, you do something silly. You bring a lavish dinner or spread to a doctor's office, and guess what? That becomes a kickback. That's illegal. That gets, somebody sees that, someone reports it, that launches an investigation. Now you get a subpoena, and it steamrolls, and now you're spending millions of dollars defending this investigation because somebody did something silly and dumb. Or even worse, someone does it on purpose.
We want to tell everybody, Inspiring Integrity, How to Win with Compliance and Propel Performance. You can get this book, of course, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever great books are sold. You tackled COVID. Oh, my goodness. And that's part of what led to this book. Tell us about that, because you almost didn't make it.
That's right, Kate. It was a life-changing event for me, and everyone knows people that have very serious events, and I don't mean to suggest mine was the worst, but I had been sick for several days, even a couple of weeks, and my wife suspected that something wasn't right. And I woke up at 2 in the morning, not being able to breathe. And my wife is a wonderful, amazing woman, former CEO, amazing businesswoman. She's beautiful and she's tough. So anyway, she comes down and says, "What's the matter?" And I have a tear rolling down my face. And I look at her, I say, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And then she verbally slapped me. She said, "You cry, you die." And I got pissed. Sorry, but I said, "Who the heck says that?" Right? And she said, "No, I'm telling you because I had an anaphylactic shock experience, and I realized if I cried and took any seconds away from my breathing, I could die because I won't get to the hospital in time. You need to go to the hospital." Long story short, I get to the hospital, Beth Israel in Boston. After I go to the urgent care, and the doctor in her spacesuit, COVID spacesuit, tells me, "Mr. Vince, with your permission, I need to call an ambulance for you. Is that okay?" And I hadn't even sat down. And she said, "I can tell by your labored breathing, by your coloring, you're oxygen deprived. You need to go." Okay, so the journey began, and then I get there, and after all these tests, I get admitted, and I'm in this room, and then the first of two Harvard doctors, the first one is a resident, then his professor, comes in. These are ostensibly the brightest, the best and the brightest doctors there is. And he looks at me, and he's looking at the machines behind me that I can't see. And in a very grim face, his very first words out of his mouth were, "Mr. Vince, for patients like you, we don't know how this will end for you. Have you had end of life discussions with your family?" Wow. I mean, imagine. Yeah. And so I try to make light of serious moments to just sort of deflect it. And so that's just who I am. And so I look at him and said, "Well, gee, nice to meet you too, doctor." Not a crack of a smile, nothing. And then he asked me what I think to this day is one of the most ridiculous questions I've ever heard in my life. He looks at me very seriously and says, "So what would you like to do?" So I collect myself. I know myself well enough to say, all right, Steve, bite your tongue, count to 10 before you answer. And I said, okay, doctor, you don't know me. I'm a Vinci and a Marine. And what that means is that I don't give up. We don't give up in my family. And apparently, what you've told me, I literally have the fight of my life on my hands. So here's what I'd like to do. I want you to help me win this fight. And then I couldn't help but let the Marine come out and said, am I clear? And so my message, though, to readers, and this is a bit of a personal message, is that if you're ever facing that situation, when someone asks you, what would you like to do? What worked for me is choose faith. Choose faith in yourself, in a higher being, but choose faith and fight like hell for what's most important for you. And for me, it was my little girl and my daughter and my family, my wife and my little girl. And again, I don't impose religion on anyone. I think everyone has the right to their own personal views about religion and God. But for me, as a Catholic, an altar boy whose eighth grade teacher, Sister Mary Elizabeth, tried to convince to become a priest. And I said, no, Sister Mary Elizabeth, I can't do that. I like girls too much and priests can't do that. So he got red as the ripest red apple you've ever seen on Snow White. And never mentioned it to me again. I think I was absolutely right about why I couldn't be a priest. But B, she likely was right because I have become, I think, in retrospect, sort of a secular corporate priest, where I'm encouraging people, not just encouraging, but showing them how to be honest and have integrity and still be successful. And that's really the point here. You don't have to cheat to win. When you think about compliance in the right way and practice it the right way.
Yeah, you don't have to cheat to win. So you're saying it, but when people hear our conversation or they read your book, Inspiring Integrity, How to Win with Compliance and Propel Performance, what do you hope the takeaway is?
The takeaway is that the best leaders are selfless. The best leaders convey to people that you care. As a young guy or as a young person, you're focused on proving how smart you are, how athletic you may be, how strong you are. But wisdom comes through empathy. Wisdom comes through real, sincere caring for others. And by caring for others, they will care for you and respect you. Again, don't misunderstand. I'm not being soft and squishy for the sake of being soft and squishy, but I'm telling you, you need to connect with the human side of people to propel performance for whatever that performance is. You have to be genuine, true to yourself. Don't mask it with all kinds of phony baloney corporate speak. People can see through it. Everyone has a BS meter. And you know it, I know it. We've all seen it. We've all heard it. Stay away from it. Doesn't mean don't be dumb. Don't say dumb things, but be your true self. And people will gravitate towards it. They will be inspired by it, and compliance will become an outcome, and performance will follow as well. So be yourself, care about others, and the rest will follow.
I love it. Steve Vince, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Kate. It's been an honor and a privilege. You're a fantastic host, a fantastic speaker yourself, an author, and I can't wait to do this again with you, perhaps some other time.
Yep, me too. Thanks, Stephen.
Okay, bye-bye.
Visit us at www.greatwritersmedia.com. Email us at info@greatwritersmedia.com or call us at +1 877 556 04